No problem. Sorry about the delay.
All right. Well, this is Jim McCarthy, Executive Board Chairman. I'm calling the Executive Board meeting for November 3rd. Here it is 1:06 in the afternoon. We're calling the meeting to order right now. So Rosie, could you do roll call, please?
Chair McCarthy, we'll start with
I
you.
am here. I am here.
Geronimo Vasquez. Appears to be here. He did. He did check in with you just a moment ago.
Yeah, I think
Hello?
he's here.
Are
There
you
you
asking
are.
about me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I got muted there for a second.
Oh, okay. Okay, Patrice Horstman is not present. Austin Aslin does not appear to be present. Tony Williams,
Present.
Regina Salas,
Present.
Jesse Thompson,
Here.
and that concludes our executive board members. And we have Metro Plan staff, Jeff Miles Milebeck, Dave Wessel,
Good afternoon, I'm here.
that Rosie Ware present, Mandia Gonzalez.
I'm here.
We have others in attendance, Ed Stillings
I'm here.
and Greg Nelson.
Hello, everyone.
Have I missed anyone in the roll call? If not, that concludes the roll call, Chair McCarthy.
Well, thank you, Rosie. Rosie, the next question is, do we have any public comment today?
Chair McCarthy, no, there has been no public comment called or emailed in ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. Next item is 1D, approval of minutes from the October 6th meeting. I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes as written with one change. On the first page, it says agenda, and that word needs to be changed to minutes, just a quick oversight. Other than that, they look good to me. Can I get a second?
I will second.
Okay, is that Tony Williams?
That's correct.
Okay, I have to learn all these voices. Do we have any discussion? Any other minor changes that anybody has noted that we need to do? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes with that one minor change, say aye, and I'll start with
Aye.
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 Do we have any nays? All right, that motion passes unanimously. This month, we don't have any consent agenda, so we'll skip right over that. Now we're down to item 3, general business. Miles, I believe you were going to give us an update on the federal and state funding. This is, of course,
Yes.
item 3A.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, let me confirm you all can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. And I have the staff report up on the screen with the federal and state funding update, which relates to 3 of our measurable objectives in the work plan. And we had a pretty lengthy discussion on this last week or last month. I'm going to do a brief update on a few items. And then a little bit later in the agenda, actually, we're going to go into some more detail on one of the items. In terms of the director's task force, this is the group of metropolitan planning organization directors like myself from around the state. There are 13 of us actually, and a task force of 5 was put together, including Maricopa County and Pima County. I shared a letter last month, and it's also included in this packet that went to John Halikowski, the ADOT director, essentially asking the state to recognize that their share of surface transportation block grant funding went up $40 million over the past 10 years. But small COGs and MPOs, our share has not gone up at all. So we're asking them to increase 10% of their total. So about 10%, a $4.4 million additional amount of funding to small COGs and metropolitan planning organizations around the state. That's in process. The good news is we have a meeting with Director Halakowski and his team on November 21st. So I should have more of an update by December, our December board meeting. The next item is the Safe Streets for All grant. We went into some detail on this the last couple of months. Mandia, I want to recognize for writing and submitting this grant. It's a $200,000 grant for vulnerable road users. And we are hoping to get an answer here. Don't know exactly when. It might be after the first of the year by the time announcements are made. Next item, an update. There really hasn't been any action on this in the past month. The Governor's Smart Fund. This is a very important and valuable source of new grant funding. It's state funding, and it's only available to small urban and rural areas, $50 million statewide. And once it becomes available, we can apply for it to serve as basically local match, state match to draw down federal funds. So it's very valuable money, and we're waiting to get more news on how and when it's going to be launched. And then the Greater Arizona Initiative. I want to recognize that Councilmember Salas is on the Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, RTAC board, is actually vice chair. Supervisor Vasquez is alternate. Both of these individuals participate regularly and in fact attended the legislative conference last month. Maybe it was in September actually. And as you will recall, there was an effort last year to put forward a $50 million funding request. That is going to continue, and RTAC has decided they're going to ask for between $100 million and $300 million. So essentially either doubling or tripling the amount requested. And it wasn't approved at the $50 million level. And as the RTAC board, representatives from around the state have looked at it, and it might be that Councilmember Salas or Supervisor Vasquez want to jump in and add a perspective to this. But as the RTAC board looked at it, they decided, yes, we need to do it again, and we need to even go bigger and make sure we ask, in a way that we get funded. So some of it is depending on the outcome of next Tuesday's election in terms of what is the makeup of the state legislature. And I think based on getting in all that information, the RTAC board will decide at what level they want to request funding. Whatever RTAC decides to do statewide, MetroPlan will be prepared to put forward our request. And I want you all to know that at the December meeting, I'm going to be bringing forward consideration of what projects we might want to fund with this grant. So let me just say one more thing here, and then I'll open it up to Councilmember Salas and Supervisor Vasquez. Last year, our share would have been $2.6 million. We went through a process and identified that all of it would go to the Lone Tree Corridor. If the amount goes up to 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, our share would go up in a commensurate way. So there's opportunity to put more of the funding towards the Lone Tree Corridor or move it to other projects. And without leaving you in suspense, I will say that some of the projects related to flood control on highways 180 and 89 are projects that seem like we might want to move some of this funding toward. So I'll be taking the technical advisory committee and ultimately the board through a process of determining that next month. And with that, let me see if I could, Mr. Chair, if Councilmember Salas or Supervisor Vasquez have anything they want to share.
I do see that Ms. Salas has her hand up. So Regina, please go ahead.
I do, because last week I attended 2 meetings with RTAC. One is the executive board, and the other one is more like a focus group on priorities, just packaging and strategizing how we put together a cohesive approach for all of our projects. But just the update, Mr. Miles, and I understand Mr. Miles was traveling that day when we have the RTAC executive board, is that we are, as RTAC, is pushing for the 300 million ask, which means, and it's divided, per capita among the MPOs and COGS. 15.6 million if approved in a one-time direct allocation state funding from the state budget surplus. MetroPlan will receive 15.6 million. So that was the discussion at the RTAC executive board, and then the meeting that followed a couple of days later was just pretty much among directors and couple of the few of us board members, including the chair, Supervisor David, to strategize how we can package this. And I believe Miles is on that list of like similar packaging of like a brochure from last year. But I also suggested like a video presentation of all the projects. Yeah. And a potential state map that identifies all the projects. So yeah, so we are moving forward with the 300 million request. And for us, for MetroPlan board, I think it will, as Mr. Miles has mentioned, perhaps for the December meeting is to discuss what projects can we identify in addition to the Lone Tree Corridor if we were to receive 15.6 million. Of course, I'm also in support of the 180 highway. In fact, I'm taking it upon myself to speak in front of the State Transportation Board in a couple of weeks, just to keep it top of mind in terms of appealing to the board to prioritize funding for the 180 box culvert. And we have already designed this, that the city has led the design in partnership, of course, with ADOT. Yeah. And then what else? So that's part of the Greater Arizona Initiative. But since I have the microphone, I just want to share that I met with Victoria Acola earlier today by Zoom. She had asked for a meeting with me in terms of just catching up and touching base and of all the roles I play within the community. And she has offered that Victoria now is in charge of coordinating all the grants and support letter application. So I said that I will bring this up to our MetroPlan board, and I will, Mr. Miles, connect with Victoria to seek a support letter for the the Safe Street for All, yeah, the Safe Street for All grant, and the senator's office is very much willing to provide a letter of support for that grant application. Also, just kind of, if we could put it on our calendars, the beginning of next year, we can also start the process of congressional direct spending requests. And I have all of that information on how to at least start with the paperwork. The deadline for that request is typically end of March. So,
Well, Regina,
That's it
thank
for
you
me.
for a comprehensive update.
mhm.
Do any other commissioners have questions or comments?
Sure, I'll make some comments.
Please go
Uh,
ahead.
All right, thank you. So first off, it's been a really good experience working with RTAC. I really appreciate the work that Miles does at that level, and also appreciate Regina for her hard work on transportation. The RTAC meetings that I've sat through have really been enlightening, and in terms of the disparities between the urban and rural areas and why it's so important to get some of these projects. When we were at the RTAC Summit, and they showed the different projects. It was amazing that these things can't get done. And so when we're talking about formula funding and we're talking about, pushing those projects, RTAC is certainly important in that effort. And so we appreciate the work they do, but I also appreciate the work that all of you do as we're going through and looking at these transportation issues, because we do have some immediate needs, like the 89 180 highway improvement for the drainages. That's one of my priorities, working with the county and dealing with forest and flood mitigation efforts moving forward, so for the long term. But then as we're also looking at the long term, thinking of things like the moving of the hospital to a whole different area of our community and how that's going to affect traffic. Right now, when we look at and this is more on the Mountain Lion end, but looking at bus service to that area, but also, everybody assumes the entrance by Fort Tuhill was at Purple Sage is going to be where everybody's going to come to the hospital. But what about Woody Mountain Road and the back road as they're starting to pave that? Do we have the proper infrastructure for that back area as people start accessing it to use the hospital? The bridge over I-40 is too narrow and probably should be added more lanes, because now you're going to have a bridge that's going to be utilized potentially by an ambulance to get to the hospital. So there's some considerations there that we need to be thinking about, and I'm really glad that we have these conversations and we're advocating on behalf of our folks, because like I said, that it is very apparent, the urban rural disparity in terms of funding. And I get it, people, number of people affected by those construction projects. I was in a different meeting last week with CPWAC, and ADOT presented their I-17 improvements, from Black Canyon City to the Sunset Point. And and it made me wonder and think, there's spots all the way up to 17 and on the 40 that also need, some help. But at the same time, look at the number of traffic we have in terms of commerce and in terms of people coming up to the Northland on that 17. And so, it was relevant because even though it's not in Coconino County, the improvements they're talking about are Maricopa County. Those improvements affect and impact our area. So again, I just really appreciate the work that all of you do, and just realize, some of these decisions are strategic decisions that'll have a huge impact on this area for the long term. And I like to play chess, which is the long-term game. I'm not into checkers or the short term. I think we have to think of those long-term visions of where we want our community to be, because we're growing, and we don't want to have a situation like what happened out in Belmont, where the community grew too fast for the infrastructure. We got to get the infrastructure in place. And so it's really important that this group takes this time as MetroPlan, and then also advising RTAC how to do that for our local area. So, all right, I guess I'm done with my soapbox. I had more to say than I thought.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'll pick up
Thank
on
you.
one quick point. Woody Mountain overpass over I-40.
Mhm.
I've walked across that bridge, and I will tell you, it is so narrow. I was scared to walk across there. And if the traffic picks up on that, we're definitely going to have to improve that bridge.
Yeah.
So any other comments from commissioners? Miles, I guess I'll pass on back to
Chairman,
you. Yes,
Chairman, Jesse Thompson here.
Jesse, please go ahead.
What I'm going to say is probably more the responsibility of NACOG, and the proposal I'm about to mention But I'll go ahead and move forward with my comment. This is regarding school bus routes that are used by the public school districts, whether they be on the reservation or off. A lot of these roads are considered failing poor roads. And I think I mentioned before that the state of Arizona, ADOT, and others are not contributing to maintaining or improving any of these school bus, public school bus routes. And right now, winter's coming on, and it really impacts the learning process of the kids when they have to wait 1 or 2, 3 hours, trying to cross a flood area or a damaged road, or even sometimes it impacts them when they have to miss 2 or 3 days of school. So that is my concern, and I always thought that maybe the way to begin addressing that is make this part of the proposal that we are talking about, the $300 million. And again, I have been talking to NACOG on this. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks, Chair.
A very good comment. I appreciate that. Any other comments? So Miles, are you done with this item? Or are we going on to the next one?
I am done with this item, Mr. Chairman.
So we're on to item 3B, Stride Forward. Miles, are you going to give us an update, or is Dave Wessel going to give us an update?
I'm going to start, and Dave will probably jump in as well.
Great, go ahead.
First thing I want to say and be really clear on is that we are no longer on schedule, and we're slated for adoption on or before April 6th, 2023. As you know, we've had the longstanding goal of, by the end of this calendar year, having Stride Forward adopted. And I have come to the conclusion and the awareness that staff are going to need more time to compile documentation and confirm some of the results, and also provide time for interagency review, so that we can put together a really complete, full, graphically well-organized presentation.
Can I
And make
interrupt real quickly? It sounds like we're getting some noise. Some people might have their mics on. If they could mute if they're not talking, that would be great. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope the mic problems aren't with me. I have to have at least one on.
No,
so
it
you
sounded
can-
good now.
Okay. All right. So, and then give more time for processing it through our member agencies. I do want to be clear that outside of the adoption schedule, all of the work that we committed to in terms of community outreach and planning has been completed, and the recommendations have been shared very broadly with the community. I know this group has seen them in a couple of different formats, probably over the course of the past month or so. And also the Stride Forward Advisory Group, that group of 8 members from the community, they've reviewed everything, and they've actually drafted a letter of support that's being circulated, where everybody from the sustainability community to the Chamber of Commerce, I think, are going to come in and support what we've been able to come up with in this plan. So certainly a lot has happened. It's just that we need more time, as I said, for some of the compilation. And I want to point out, although I don't like missing deadlines, I do have to acknowledge that there are no consequences to missing it by a few months. Ed Stilling's on the phone. FHWA is not going to stop funding us because we adopt this plan a few months late. And I think the time that we put in actually will be well spent. So the new time frame is up on the screen. And basically with adoption requested by April 2023, we might do it by March, but I don't want to extend the deadline again. So I just gave us the time we need to be sure the whole team could complete the work. And with that, if I could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to see if Dave Wessel has anything he wants to add. And then I'd like to open it up for questions and comments from the board.
Yeah, thank you, Miles. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'll just add this. We've done a lot of policy development. That work is fairly well complete. You've seen those policies and the attachments in the document. And we have done some additional public involvement. At a presentation to you earlier, you had found that we were in fact meeting our expectation of having a robust system. We've been out again with another online survey. We have surveyed our stakeholders, and we had 3 virtual public meetings in October. And as Miles mentioned, we're pretty well wrapped up by now with the public involvement. We'll be compiling all of that information and using it to screen the policies that have been presented to you in terms of the type and level of support from the public that one might expect for those policies. So thank you for your time.
Do we have any questions or comments? Well, thank you, Miles. We don't slip on things very often, but the real world, it happens. So I'm glad that we have a kind of a backup schedule, and we should be able to make that with no problem. All right, are we done with this item, Miles? I believe so.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so the next thing is 3C, South Lone Tree Planning and Environmental Linkage Study. And Miles, you're going to start this, and then Mandia is going to help you, I believe.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I want to give a little background on this item. Really, it was 2 or 3 years ago, as MetroPlan was working with the city and other member agencies to figure out how we can be competitive for congressionally directed spending. At the time, it was pending that it was coming. And as Councilmember Salas pointed out, it definitely is back, and there's going to be another round being considered here after the election. So when we went into this process about 3 years ago, one of the things we identified that MetroPlan could do would be to do some of the environmental work on a stretch of the Lone Tree Corridor. And Mandia is going to share what that environmental work has come up with and maps, so you can see the project we're looking at. What I just want to provide in terms of context is in terms of what MetroPlan can provide to our member agencies. There was a sticking point of, if we ask for congressionally directed spending, they're going to say, have you completed your environmental work? And we wanted to be able to say, yes, we have, because it makes the project more competitive. So that's what the essence of this project is. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mandia.
Great, thank you so much. Give me just a second to pull up this presentation. All right, thank you, Miles, for that background, and good afternoon, Chair McCarthy, members of the board. I'm assuming everybody can see my screen okay, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, in addition to the background provided by Miles, I wanted to start off with some reminders on this project, starting with the purpose. And the purpose of this PEL is to provide direction to the city about potential environmental impacts and mitigations to allow for the timely development of the future roadway expansion along South Lone Tree Road. The Pell is a formal process, and it helps us to identify both environmental and transportation issues. It develops the purpose and need for that future expansion, and it streamlines the project development while reducing any duplication in any of the following NEPA requirements or processes. And the primary deliverable for this project is a Pell statement and checklist. And EnviroSystems Management, Inc. was awarded the contract for this study. They will be examining the area between Zuni Drive and J.W. Powell, which is about 900 feet of roadway, and are assessing 300 feet on either side. And just for some clarity, the Pell does not provide roadway designs. However, it will identify and establish the largest potential footprint, which will inform the future design of this section of roadway. And that future design will be led by the city. And as Miles had mentioned, essentially MetroPlan is conducting this Pell to demonstrate progress should the opportunity to place an appropriation request arise again. It sounds like that's going to happen fairly quickly. And additionally, the study could potentially support any other federal funding or grant opportunities. So looking at the study schedule, we are just starting to get into the deliverables, starting with the existing and future conditions report, which we have received a draft of. And in that draft, which is still being modified a bit before being sent to city staff for review, there were 3 environmental items that will require future conversations around potential mitigations. And those 3 are the floodplain at the Zuni and Lone Tree intersection. It does sit in the 100-year floodplain, with a small portion also in the 500-year floodplain. The second item is the Bow and Arrow Wash is identified as a wildlife corridor. Actually, I have an update to that. We did meet with Arizona Game and Fish yesterday, and they do not have any concerns about future expansion. However, we are still determining if mitigation is needed at a federal level. And then, of course, the recreational site of the Foots Trailhead and parking lot. With expansion of this roadway and any intersection improvements, there may be the need for the Foots access to be realigned. And as part of that existing and future conditions report, EnviroSystems will be providing recommendations for future analysis and mitigation strategies for these 3 conditions and any other conditions that may come up. And lastly, next week, we are kicking off our public engagement with an online survey that asks participants to help us identify any issues and needs in the corridor. We wanted to target the residents, especially within the study area. So a postcard will be sent to about 1,100 residents and businesses with a link to the survey and an invite to an open house on November 14th, which will be held at Coconino Community College. So if you're looking for something fun to do on a Monday night, be sure to come visit us. And that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
I have one question. I noticed the study doesn't go north, well, a few, 300 feet,
okay.
but basically it does not go north of Zuni. And so is there a need for a similar study between Zuni and the railroad tracks? Or has that already been done?
I can speak to that, Mandia.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Eventually, if federal funding is going to be used for sections north of Zuni, then environmental work will need to be completed. However, the way this project was developed, we separated out a section of the entire corridor that could stand alone as a project that we could pursue federal funding for. At the time we've done this, and the city's in the midst of some shifting right now, but there was more hesitation. There was less desire to use federal funding because it comes with strings and makes projects tend to cost more. But for a variety of reasons, I think that's been shifting. One of the big reasons, obviously, is the amount of federal funding that's become available under the bipartisan infrastructure law. So just to summarize, this is one distinct component project that we can pursue, and it is a larger question if the city is going to want to pursue federal funding for more of the corridor. And I'll just wrap up by saying we've invited the city, Jeff Bowman, Trevor Henry, to do a presentation to the board and give an update on where they're at with projects under 419. So that could help illuminate the answer to what you just asked, Chair McCarthy.
Well, thank you. Do any other board members have questions? Speak up. Don't be shy.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Please.
one of the things I love about this project is it's given us an opportunity to showcase Mandia Gonzalez and her work. I want to point out it's Mandia's year anniversary thereabouts, and Mandia is a new position that we created to be able to do work in-house, and this is a project that really demonstrates that. So I just want to thank and recognize Mandia for her efforts.
Congratulations. You're certainly a pleasure to work with.
So thank you all.
And you have a nice grin too. All right, anything else on this, Miles, or should we move on to D?
I think we can move on.
So the next one is a Smart and Attain grant application. Go ahead.
Okay, I will put the staff report up on the screen. So we do have a strategic work plan item to secure an additional $2 million, including signal technology. And this particular grant ties to signal technology. And we've been pursuing the funding since 2021. This time I want to recognize David Wessel, who's been very involved in this grant. It was a year or two beforehand that he was working on it with member agencies to finally submit a grant last year. We learned that we did not get the grant. And Dave did a debrief with folks at FHWA just a few weeks ago, and we learned some things. And one of them is that the grant was rated as not recommended. And there are really three categories: highly recommended, recommended, and not recommended. And so, yeah, this is not great news, but it is the news. And that rating was given in part because as things have moved on, the technology was really no longer considered as innovative as some new technology. The other issue we have is that technology currently installed along the project corridor, it actually has some capacity that we are not utilizing. So before the granting agency approves funding for new technology, they want to see the current technology is fully operationalized. And essentially what that means is there are programming capabilities within the current system that can detect and adjust to changing traffic conditions. But getting that done is an investment of time and staffing from the city of Flagstaff. And city obviously has a lot to do, so it's been a question of what are they going to prioritize. And they've had some staffing changes, so they just haven't been able to make that work. The estimate is it's about $100,000 to get that technology, optimized as it currently exists. The other point I want to make is, I think everyone in this room knows, in the past few years, there's been increased interest in pedestrian and bicycle enhancements for a number of reasons. And Dave Wessel, I want to recognize, has continued to work with NAU, and they are looking at actually more innovative technology with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and detecting patterns of pedestrian and bicycle usage. So Dave is working with them now to see about reworking the grant. And then I think my final bullet, and I definitely want to turn it over to Dave, Mr. Chairman, because he's expert on all the details. I just want to point out that an intergovernmental agreement really still needs to be done, even if we didn't get the grant, between NAU and the city and Metro Plan. Because whether we get federal funding or not, by doing an intergovernmental agreement between our three organizations, we'll be more able to use staff resources and be able to send money between our organizations. So that's something that we're going to continue to work on because we obviously will be collaborating between these three groups. So with that, if I could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Dave to correct or add to anything that I missed.
Thank you, Miles, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Just a few details, a little broader context. So a few years ago, the city installed this advanced traffic management system in Butler Avenue and put fiber in place. The grant would extend that fiber out Huntington and US 89 to Smoke Rise and install a similar system, signal system on 89, including the detection systems necessary. We are still looking at using the grant to develop the timing plans. I think ideally, as Miles said, we would have those ahead of time, but we're not going to get those by this time next week or November 18th when the grant is due. That said, the part of the innovation and the detection of pedestrians that we're looking to do with NAU is actually to count those pedestrians and take that data and feed it into this responsive traffic management system so that when it reaches a certain threshold, the timing plan will change and be more supportive of pedestrian movements through the corridor. So that's just a brief addition to what we'll be asking for in this grant. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments? Right, I think we're ready to move on to 3E, which is the invitation for ADOT to join our management committee. And Miles, there was a couple versions of the draft letter that went out. Maybe you can speak to that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as we went through our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis last spring, we identified that relationships with ADOT are very important, and we were looking for ways to improve those relationships up here. And I drafted a letter to invite a member of ADOT Director's Office to serve on our Metro Plan Management Committee. And that management committee consists of the city manager, the county manager, the NAPTA CEO, and the NAU President's Office. And the idea is to bring ADOT staff into that group, management staff into that group, because we can just go through really some of the areas between technology and policy and be a kind of a blend and a bridge. And then all of those high-level managers can make determinations together and collaborate before we bring things to you. So I drafted a letter, and after sending out the TAC packet, I thought better of the letter and spent some more time on it. So I sent you an updated version that just goes into a little more detail on what the management committee does. And I think is safe to say is perhaps a little more tactful and gentle in the way it makes the invitation to Director Halakowski. So a copy of the letter was put in the packet and then was also sent out afterward. I need to confirm, Rosie, did you update the packet that's up on the screen with the new letter, or does it still have the old one?
Chair McCarthy, Miles, the letter that's in the packet is the letter that was provided on Friday. I don't know if there should have been a different version.
I'm looking at it right now. It's the old version that's in the packet.
Okay, I'm going to call up the new one.
The second sentence starts, "We want your office," and I remember we changed that wording. So I know this is the old one. You did send that out to the whole executive committee, though, I believe, didn't you?
Yes.
I don't know if people have noticed it in their inbox.
So I did send it out, and it's still a fairly brief letter. And it's before you on the screen right now. The point of sending this, as I'd mentioned, is to get the ADOT Director's Office on the Management Committee. We have a meeting with the ADOT Director on November 21st to talk about the funding, Director's Task Force funding, and that's going to be a good opportunity to share this letter as well. One of the questions I have for the group, certainly I'd like your support on the letter. You can edit it. If you see anything alarming, let me know and I can change it. And then I have it signed by the chair. There's an option, if the board wishes, it could be signed by the chair and the vice chair, the whole board. But just to keep things rolling here and to keep it simple, I have it coming out from the chair. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it back to you for discussion.
Well, yeah, we can discuss the letter. Did you need a formal motion on this or just kind of a informal thumbs up on it? We can go.
I don't need a formal action. Let me see what I put on the, I would like one. I just agendized it for action. So it'd be nice just to do it formally.
Well, I'll just, I'll move that we approve the letter and the version that was sent out individually, not the version that's in the packet. I've reviewed both of them, and in my opinion, the new one is a good letter and better than the first letter. I don't know if others can read it on the screen now or if they had a chance to read it. I'll open it up for discussion. Any comments from board members on this? If not, maybe we can get a second on the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion. Regina Salas seconded. Any other discussion on this? And thank you for doing. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I like the letter and I think it's good. My only question is this meeting on the 21st, is that gonna be just you, Miles, or is that gonna be staff with the director? Is that gonna be some of us board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chair Vasquez, the meeting on the 21st is intended to be staff primarily. If the chair is the one who's signing this letter, I'd like to work with the chair offline to see if he's available, to present this letter to Director Halikowski.
Good, thank you. Sounds good.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I'd have to double check my schedule, but I'm willing to attend. Assuming I don't have a conflict. And what's the date of that again?
November 21st.
Yeah, what time?
At,
You know what, you can get back to me later. No sense taking board time on this.
okay. I'll work with you after the meeting.
Okay. Any other
Chairman.
discussion?
Chairman,
Yes,
being a board member, ADOT board member, is there anything that might be an issue if I take a vote on this?
I think it's okay.
Okay,
Or you could abstain.
Uh,
But I don't see it as a conflict of interest. So I think it's okay that
Okay.
you could vote on it.
that's good for me.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Do we have any no votes on this? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you all, Jeff and everyone.
Thank
All right,
you.
Miles, we're down to items from the Metro staff. That would be you and your friends.
Yes, I'm going to get to that part on the agenda. And let you know that there's a group called the Rural or the Resource Allocation Advisory Council. That's a statewide group that talks about how funding is distributed around the state. I've been invited to serve on that, and their meeting is happening November 16th, I believe. So I appreciate that opportunity. And in terms of staffing, over the past few months, the board has approved a couple of positions. I want to let you know that we're in interviews process, final negotiations with the finalists. So I hope to make an announcement on one of the positions within the next week or so. And we're still taking recruitments on the second position. And I'm going to look to the staff team to see if I missed anything that they want to share. And if not, that concludes my report.
Okay, we're up to item G. Future agenda items for future meetings. You want to discuss that briefly?
Yes, in fact, we've already hit most of these in December. The Rural Transportation Advocacy Council, I'll bring that back for discussion, where we distribute that $15.6 million. In January, just a standing annual item is the board and the TAC need to have an annual orientation and a Title VI training. Rosie will be leading that effort in January. And then April 2023 is when we're looking to have the Stride Forward Regional Transportation Plan adopted. I actually do have one other item that's not here, Mr. Chairman, which has to do with the February 2nd, 2023 Executive Board meeting. We have learned, and actually I want to recognize Councilmember McCarthy identified that there's a conflict with the city budget meeting that week. And we've been discussing if we want to move our meeting. And for what I'm going to suggest we do, and of course I will do whatever the board wants us to do, is hold on that for a bit. It might be that we can manage to just do the January and the March meeting. If we need, there might be some shift with the schedule that still makes February 2nd possible. And also we have some elections happening. We're going to have some changes in board members. So if we are going to move a meeting, I would rather wait until, those election decisions are made. So at this time, I just want to let the board know that there's a bit of a conflict potentially, likely, but I'd like to try to resolve that conflict a little bit later rather than try to change something right now.
Right, any questions? All right, we can talk about that issue later. If 3 city council members go to the budget retreat and not to the Metro Plan meeting, we could still have a quorum, but it'd be a little more tenuous. But the other thing is, and if there's anything really of great significance, we could have another meeting, a special meeting to discuss whatever that is. So we're down to closing business. We're zipping through this and zooming through it on Zoom. Let me go around to the board members and see if you have any announcements or last minute things you would like to bring up. I'll start with Geronimo Vasquez. Do you have any comments, Geronimo?
No, thank you. I pretty much said my piece during the RTAC conversation. So just be safe out there. I'm heading up to Page this afternoon for NACOG meeting tomorrow morning, and we'll be out there for the hot air balloon regalia. So I've never been to one of those, so that looks cool. So be safe out there, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Williams, do you have any thoughts for closing?
Chairman McCarthy, no, I don't. I just appreciate the earlier presentations and the information that Jeff Miles shared with us during today's meeting. Really appreciated seeing the Lone Tree corridor maps and that information. That was really nice. So thank you.
And thank you, Tony. Regina Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a gentle reminder to Miles to connect with Victor Okula from Senator Sinema's office about the senator writing a support letter to, actually, we have 2 grant application in process at the federal level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Miles, I also want to connect with you offline. Just kind of have my some potential talking points when I speak to the State Transportation Board in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jesse Thompson.
Okay, I guess one thing I need to remind everyone here is that December will probably be my last meeting, and I'll be terming out as a member of the State Transportation Board at the end of December. So I don't know at what point. It may take some time to get a replacement for me. Again, that will probably all depend on the Coconina County Supervisor. So that's just information for you. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Jesse, it's been great to work with you. You've been on this board the whole time I've been on it and more. Well, our next meeting will be December 1st at 1 o'clock. So I'm all looking forward to that. So last chance, if anybody has any last minute thoughts, if not, I'll adjourn. Not hearing anything. So I think we'll adjourn the meeting right now. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.